So I grew up in Los Sures, and when I was 13 years old, we moved to north of Los Sures into Greenpoint, where I now live. So I've lived in this community my entire life. And like my dad, I represented this neighborhood in the New York State Assembly in 1973 until 2020. And so I got a pretty quick training in activism, because the night that I was elected to the assembly in 1972, on election night, it was raining very, very hard. And I got a call from a very angry constituent. Even though I wasn't an assemblyman yet, I was just elected that day, but I wouldn't serve until January. And he wanted me to do something about it. So I didn't. I told him that I can't do anything about it now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning when he called me. And I said, but I'll be happy to come by tomorrow, which I did. And I went to visit my constituent, and he told me about the problems that are facing the neighborhood, with sewers being backed up and water going into people's basements. And he's sick and tired of it. And he wants me, now that I've been elected, to do something about it. I said, I'm sorry I couldn't come out last night, but I start serving in January, and I'll be happy to go to the commissioner and see how we can resolve this problem. So that was my first experience in activism. And I have to tell you that that summer of that year, right after my election, there were big protests in the neighborhood, because every time it rained, people's basements were flooded. And so I went with them to the Department of Environmental Protection, as well as to go to City Hall. And we were successful in getting the city department to clean out the sewer lines so that the problem would stop. And we were successful. So that was my first introduction into activism, and it never stopped after that. As a matter of fact, twice after that, I had to get the city to clean those sewer lines to make sure they were up to snuff, because it goes through the sewage treatment plant, and it gets stuck sometimes, and it backs up. The sewers get backed up and go into people's homes. But we resolved that problem. But the night of the library, I talked about Robert Moses ruining our neighborhood and destroying it. And I learned from that a very big lesson, I think, because Robert Moses tried to solve the problem by shoving down people's throats. And if you look at the South Side, all of these concrete playgrounds that are nice, but I'm a believer in green space. I want parks and playgrounds where people can run in the grass and enjoy it. Unfortunately, we have people now who believe that concrete sidewalks and blocks are enough for people to have to play on. But I didn't believe that. And part of my activism was to try and create as many parks as I possibly could that were green space. And I was very fortunate in my career, because I talked the night of the library, at the library, I talked about the major waste station that they had built there, garbage transfer station. And I was able and successful to get rid of that station because we had the people behind us, and I was able to get legislation passed in Albany that virtually put them out of business, and they could no longer be a transfer station on the waterfront. And so that enabled me to get money to build the East River State Park that the state funded through the Environmental Protection Fund. And we were able to get our first park on the waterfront. First, because that waterfront was not used for anything yet. And so all of these people wanted to come who had noxious uses, like garbage transfer and so forth. I'll get to the next problem because it came right away. in the 80s and in the 90s, where they tried to have a gas-fired electric plant right on the waterfront. And you heard some of the people who were there talk about that, where we went to the governor's office and stopped that plant as well on the waterfront. And now we have Bushwick Inlet State Park coming. The largest park in the neighborhood, 28 acres, is being built. The city tried not to give us that park, even though they promised it as part of the package of rezoning that waterfront for housing. But councilman and I were successful in getting this city administration, the de Blasio administration, to make a commitment, buy the land from the owner for the park, and that whole area will now be parks. All the way down from North 6th Street into Greenpoint will be one huge park, because I was there to make it happen as an activist. Not only me. As I said at the event that we had at the library, all of the people who protested were the most important ones that got it done. But they needed me as their champion to go to City Hall and get it done. And we did it. We had to act as real estate brokers to try and get the city to come up with their offer and try to get the owner to come down with their offer. And you did it just like a real estate broker, and we got it done. The city council member and I. He went to the city, told him, you got to raise your offer. And we told the owner of the property, you're not getting 300 million. You're going to get 150 million. And finally, they settled for 158 million, and that's how we got it. The secret is very simple. You don't just get up and scream and holler and say that you want this and you want that, unless you're willing to get your hands dirty and do it yourself. And it takes effort on the part of an elected official and the community working together to get things done. It's not just protest, protest, protest. You have to work at it. I found in my experience that I learned through a family of politicians. The best advice I could give is, if you want something and you deserve to have it, you should never give up on the dream to get it done. And for example, I told the people of the South Side who were fighting for a park underneath the BQE. I don't know if the powers that be want to do it, but I said, this is another example of the Robert Moses dilemma that we have. They built this expressway. They killed 6 kids. You heard me talk about that at the library. They killed 6 kids. And we deserve it. We deserve it as a monument to those 6 children who died, to have a park in their memory, because this highway was built even though we didn't want it and we opposed it. But now give us a real park, not just a concrete park or a sidewalk and a concrete street to play on. We want a real park. And that was the example that I offered them, because they were campaigning a couple of years ago to try and get the city to do that. Well, the neighborhood is good because of the things we were able to do to make it better. I haven't gone into all the details about a leakage of gas and oil underneath the ground that we got the state to finally get in and clean up, and also penalize ExxonMobil by giving us plenty of money so community organizations could survive. We built the library out of that money. You heard one of the persons who was there talk about how we were able to get money for the library, the new library for Greenpoint. And we got a new money for a lot of different things because of the way this neighborhood has been environmentally disadvantaged by polluters, and they've gotten away with it. Well, we didn't let them get away with it. We caught up with them. and we were able to get plenty of money out of them, and they're not polluting. The sewage treatment plant that I talked about, we had that problem with backup because it was old and dilapidated. They finally updated it. After the sewage treatment plant was originally built, it used to stink this neighborhood up. You don't smell anything now. You used to be able to smell it every day because it was right down the street, along with an incinerator that we were able to get rid of through activism, that Joe Lentol and Congresswoman Maloney went to the city and said, enough is enough already with our neighborhood. And it was right down North Henry Street. This block here is North Henry Street. You had the incinerator and the sewage treatment plant just down the block. And so we live side by side with it now, but they are no longer polluters because of activism. I can't take credit for all of it, but I was there and I was at every meeting that I needed to be at in order to stop this from going on. And that's what it takes, not only to be an elected official, but for somebody who wants to get things done from the neighborhood. And you heard Adam Perlmutter, who was there, talk about how we went to the governor's office and stopped them from building that power plant right in the smack middle of the waterfront. We were trying to fix things. Our park right across the street here had the Asian longhorn beetle invade and killed all of our maple trees. Gone. And long gone. So I was able to get the Department of Agriculture and Markets in the state, along with the federal government, to replace all of those trees, like I did in Williamsburg through one of the organizations that worked very hard to green Williamsburg, to get more of green space as well as green trees. And we also did a greening of Greenpoint through that environmental package that we got through the oil spill that lives under the ground still, but is being cleaned up in Greenpoint.